Our next composer, young composer Anthony O'Toole, is a prolific young composer who's asserted himself as a promising new voice among contemporary composers. Although largely self-taught, as a composer, he studied composition at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania and George Mason University, where he studied primarily with noted American composers Jack Stamp and our own Maestro Mark Camphouse. In the last 5 years, Mr. O'Toole has seen success as a composer, winning numerous prizes, publishing over a dozen works, and having his music played by some of the finest ensembles in this country and internationally. His music has been featured in major publications and has been a part of many recording projects. Would you please welcome composer Anthony O'Toole.
Hello, I'd like to just briefly echo the gratitude for the ensemble and to the mentors and Lieutenant Colonels Ryan Allen and Fedig for offering their ensemble and their services. I'd like to talk briefly about the piece. Now is the Time, A Song of Hope, was written in the fall of 2013 in commemoration of the 50th anniversary of civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King's iconic I Have a Dream speech given on August 28, 1963, to a crowd of 250,000 men, women, and children gathered at the foot of the great emancipator Abraham Lincoln. The composition is a tribute to Dr. King's life and his work, as well as many of the other civil rights activists that fought so ardently in the 1950s and 60s for equality and an end to racial injustice in our country. But overall, the piece is a musical portrayal of the pursuit of freedom and equality. In his speech, Dr. King asked for the United States to hold true to its founding doctrines of equality for all men and women and freedom from oppression. The piece begins with a clarinet solo, so simple and pure. It represents the basic ideals of our founding fathers and the American dream. So as our country began with these ideals, the piece starts with this motive, and it appears throughout the work as the dream Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of was in all actuality the American dream. The first theme heard initially in the clarinet develops and blossoms into a hymn-like treatment. The next section introduces a new theme, foreshadowed by the trumpet solo earlier in the piece. The theme is humbly stated by the oboe and bassoon, then again by the brass. We enter a lush, dreamy soundscape that accompanies the solo saxophone. The music becomes nobler, and with the entrance of the snare drum signals the March on Washington that happened earlier that day. Out of the dream marches the reality of the civil rights movement implementing Dr. King's dream and demanding the rights guaranteed to all men and women by the Constitution. And 100 years earlier, before the speech, the Emancipation Proclamation, which was issued on January 1st of 1863. The bold climax of the piece slowly winds down, gradually fading off into the distance, revisiting the dreamlike textures from earlier in the piece. The song, We Shall Overcome, is quoted in the solo clarinet. The percussion and fluttering winds create a shimmering layer of tremolos and arpeggios, while the brass states the second theme. The timpani restates the martial drum beat of the snare drum earlier, signifying that the movement for equality still marches on into the present day as our country and the rest of the world continue to address the issue of equality, human rights, and discrimination. This piece intends to honor the legacy and message of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his teachings, but also remind us that hope is our most powerful weapon against oppression. Thank you very much.